Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session, Mission Critical, Creating Opportunity for 1 Million Young People. My name is Mark Cameron. I'm the Chief Executive of an organisation called the 5% Club. We're a charity and we focus on encouraging employers to increase the volume of earn and learn schemes they offer, and then as they're doing so, to think about the accessibility and inclusion of those schemes. I'm joined by a fantastic panel of speakers this morning to explore this subject in more detail. But just before we launch off into the panel, and each of the speakers will introduce themselves and then say what their organisation does and more importantly, their perspective on this particular challenge. I think I'd just like to provide some context. In particular, the day after the government and the Department for Education have announced their skills and education policy post 16, which some of you may have been able to look at overnight, or if you're like me, you've used AI to summarize it for you. But there's a huge amount in there for young people, and it's no mistake that skills is transferred, particularly for post 18, from Department for Education to Department for Work and Pensions, because the cost in welfare terms of 1 million unemployed or economically inactive young people is significant, and that's the government's focus. I think hopefully for most of the audience you'll be familiar with a lot of the issues that create youth unemployment, and I'm sure they'll be unpacked by our panelists this morning. But there's skills gaps, there's lack of employability experience, the economy is working against them. There's a whole host of mental health issues, and I think those of you who may have seen the adolescence programme earlier this year will have picked up on the particular impact on mental health in young people. And there's a lot of rigidity in the labour market as organisations focus on what they did rather than perhaps what they could do moving forward. So that's on the supply side, and that's on the young person's perspective. But also from a business perspective, there are really challenging economic headwinds. There is the whole issue of the fourth industrial revolution, AI, automation, and in a challenging market when employers are looking to increase productivity, many of them are dwelling a pause before they recruit to see if they can use AI or automation to address their issues. And unfortunately, that has a disproportionate impact on young people. We're seeing a dramatic decrease in the number of graduates leaving university and going on to graduate schemes. And similarly, in a number of sectors, those starter jobs that people would have done as they left education are now being automated or AI is being used. And it's got that significant impact on entry roles. So there's the supply side issue in terms of young people, their aspirations and preparedness for work. And then there's the demand side, which is employers' ability to accommodate young people and perhaps some of the complexities going back to that white paper that I talked about. So that's a sort of a general introduction. And I'm sure today, when we look at this through the lens of social value, that will help employers start to unlock the barriers they may perceive and look at some of the opportunities. Like I said, I'm joined by a fabulous panel of speakers, 4 in total. And what I'd like to do now is just hand over to the first, Lisa from the King's Trust. Lisa, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Lisa Vicary. I'm Head of Impact at the King's Trust. So the King's Trust was set up by King Charles almost 50 years ago now. So next year we'll be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Trust. We've supported around 1 million young people in that time, and we work right across the spectrum of ages, so from 13 through to 30. So really at that kind of transition period into adulthood. Our programs focus really, I suppose, in like 5 key areas. So we start with education. We've got to focus in education settings, foundational skills for work, through to movement into work or starting your own business, and then supporting once in that positive outcome, which is a more recent kind of change in our program offering. And in summary, we really support young people to build their confidence, to build their skills, and then to move into employment and sustain that employment. The young people that we support have complex needs. And what we mean by that is, well, around 2/3 of our young people have more than one need that affects their physical, their mental, their social, or their financial well-being. So our role as an organisation is to really meet those young people where they are, and support them with their goals. Some young people could be much further away from employment than others. We have stories of some of our staff that encourage young people to leave their homes for, they haven't left their home for quite a long time, and to encourage them into our centres, through to graduates who have clarity on what they want, but they're facing barriers in achieving it. So our role is really to work effectively with our employer partners and create that opportunity and bridge that gap between young person need and employer need. So more recently, I suppose not surprising to hear, and I think Mark touched on it, from a young person's perspective, what we're seeing is a lot more young people reporting more poor mental health. Around 1 in 3 young people that come to us report that. We're observing as well a mismatch between job aspiration and the roles that are available. And also there's a lack of certainty and understanding about the future world of work. So there are a lot of young people that are feeling that the future world of work isn't for them, particularly with AI and everything that's happening there. So that's us and my perspective.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Lisa. Really helpful to get that context, and great to hear of the work of King's Trust. Can I now introduce Jessica from the Social Mobility Partnership? Jessica, over to you. Sorry, I was looking at 5 bits of paper.
Thanks,
I got
Mark.
slightly confused.
No problem at all. It's a bit of a mouthful. So yes, hi everyone. My name is Jess Clarkson. I'm thrilled to be here today. I am Managing Director of the Social Mobility Business Partnership. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself first. So I am an animal mad country girl at heart, and as such, when I was younger, I was adamant I would become a vet. But unfortunately, biology was not my forte, and despite attending all of the extra revision classes, when results day came, it was clear that perhaps I needed to reassess my career plans. And my career guidance from my state school was that I should become a teacher because I was good at maths, but having helped my mum raise 3 younger siblings, I was not interested in working with children. I wanted independence, I wanted financial security, and so I went out to the big wide world and decided that I was going to go to university, study maths, and then figure out what I really wanted to do while I was doing that, and how hard could it be. Of course, it was pretty tough, but I got there, and 5 years later, I graduated from Bath University with a maths degree, and then so the job hunt began, and more struggles there. But I did eventually secure my first job, which was in fact a 6-month maternity contract at ITV. And it's there that I met Barry Matthews, and if anyone's met him, I'm sure you will agree that his passion for social mobility is truly infectious. And I ended up working at ITV for 7 years, and during that time he started drumming up volunteers to start a new programme that ITV was running called the Legal Social Mobility Partnership. Spoiler alert, this project later became the Social Mobility Business Partnership and the registered charity that it is today. The project really resonated with myself, and my volunteer role grew and grew, as did the programme, and I ended up spending sort of heading up the operations during evenings and weekends and just absolutely loving it. So in 2019, when the opportunity came to jump ship, I moved over to SMBP full-time, and I have not looked back since. But enough about me, sorry, I just thought I'd share my little story there. So about SMBP. So SMBP has been built on an understanding that whatever background you are from, you should have equal access to opportunities to succeed. It's not about working class individuals being in the top tier of earners. And of course, talking about social mobility is a great way to raise awareness, and we're here today to talk about it. But beyond that, the bigger challenge is making meaningful change. And we truly believe that collaboration is the key to that. We are a very much volunteer-led charity, so we are a collaboration of over 150 organisations who are all committed to supporting 16 to 18-year-olds from low-income backgrounds in their pursuit of a career in business. The students who take part in our programme benefit from 4 quality, meaningful encounters with the world of work in just 1 week. They visit a different business each day. The students develop their key employability skills through interactive business games. They gain an insight into the world of work, getting an insight into what each business does, and then also understand the future career opportunities that are there for them, which is really crucial for the long-term impact of the programme, where we're trying to achieve the sustained employment of young people. The 5th day is our Resilience and Goal Planning Day, which is delivered in partnership with local professional sports clubs, sort of helping translate sports psychology to career success. And the students that we're working with are in that pivotal time where they've got some big decisions to make. They're going out to a big wide world, and they're going to have setbacks along the way, and a little bit of resilience will certainly come in handy. We could all do with it, I think. Following the SMBP week, students gain access to our alumni app where they can get support via our career mentoring platform, find out about recruitment opportunities through the businesses that we work with. And also there's further career support there, such as videos on student finance from our patron, Martin Lewis. I'm just kind of going to wrap up here because I'm mindful I should only be talking for 5 minutes and I can talk forever. But I guess just to kind of go back to what I said about collaboration being the key. When we launched SMBP as a small project in 2014, we just had 20 students attending in London. In 2024, we had 1,000 students take part in our programs in over 20 towns and cities across the UK. We are a team of 4, and that was all enabled through our collaborative approach, making sure our program is accessible to all. We work with SMEs and large corporates, delivering programs online and in person. And we really utilise as much technology as we can to streamline our processes and make social mobility accessible for all. And that's me. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Jessica. And it's no problem talking lots and filling the time. So that's really good. And it's stimulated some questions. So I'm just looking here at chat and Q&A. And it's great to see Guy is leading from the front and has asked the first question, which we'll circle back to, I'm sure. But if any of you in the audience as we go through this have got questions, please put them in Q&A and we'll get to those towards the end of the session. So now I'd like to go over to Sarah Porretta from
Young
Enterprise. Thanks, Sarah.
That's okay. I know what it's like when you're trying to juggle a million pieces of paper on online on these conferences. So hi everyone, I'm really excited to be here and to join such a great panel and look forward to getting stuck into the Q&A afterwards. But you may or may not know Young Enterprise. We are actually a 60-year-old charity in the UK. And many people my age or around about my age, 10 years either side, will know us for our company programme, which is probably a very early example of applied learning in the UK. So young people set up and run company for up to 9 months, and it's actually a global competition, but we do a lot more than that now. So we have a broader offer around enterprise employability and financial capability, but we very much stick to that ethos of applied learning, and we reach about 500,000 young people a year, ranging from a very in-depth program like the company program through to lighter touch kind of day programs and things like that as well. So this is obviously such a big issue, that 1 million young people are not in education, employment or training. And when young people are excluded, we lose so much. We lose that rich skills pipeline, and we lose that link between employers and young people having that future workforce readiness. And that impacts the whole economy. So we think this isn't just an issue that's really focused on young people. It's much, much broader. We really need to work on this to help the wider economy. And it's been great. Just an observation from our perspective is we're really seeing a shift as well from traditionally a lot of funding for large organisations, well, medium-sized charities like ours, we're from CSR budgets, and actually more and more we're seeing investment from organisations that are looking to really crack this issue around social value and thinking about pipelines and routes into employment. And I'll give you a couple of examples of some great organisations we're working with in just a second. But of course, one of the things we're thinking about is not just how we engage neat young people, but how we can prevent young people becoming neat in the first place. So I wanted to tell you a little story, and this was a story that I heard in my very first week as CEO at Young Enterprise. And it really hit home, actually, the power of the kind of giving young people this experience of real learning in school. So this school, Denby Hall in Luton, they had 13 boys that were right at the risk of exclusion. So the school had recognised that their attendance and their attitude to learning was no longer sustainable, and they were trying to find ways to make sure that they kept these young people in school. And so they decided to take quite a tough decision, really, and an interesting decision, because a lot of our programs are delivered as extracurricular activities, but they decided to take these young boys out of modern languages as a last resort and put them through the company program instead. And they track their attendance and attitude to learning. And for most of those 10 boys, that went up significantly. In some cases, very significantly. And the reason was those young boys found something they were really good at. It was really hands-on and practical. It was applicable to the real world. They understood that they were learning skills they would be able to use in later life: confidence, teamwork, And one young lad said the reason that he came to school on the days that they were doing that program was because he was so excited to come and sell. And it reset his relationship with teachers as well, who started to respect him, and he felt he had a role in school. So in multiple ways, getting those young boys involved in something really practical and hands-on that would give them skills for employment was a massive turnaround for them. So the second part I think that's really important in terms of breaking down barriers is ensuring that young people can see and access clear pathways to employment. And one of the barriers to that is that the provision is really patchy in terms of young people receiving access to meaningful enterprise and work readiness experience. And that is particularly the case in disadvantaged areas. And our strategy for a number of years has been to really target areas of disadvantage and young people facing multiple barriers to access, and really design programs that work with them and are co-designed with them as well. So we hear things from young people like, I don't know what jobs are out there. I don't know what skills are needed or how I can get them. I don't know anyone who works in business. And often, and there's a story that one of my colleagues always tells, they had a group of young people that were coming to a careers day at a very shiny office, and their school was not far down the road. And they were late. And my colleague called the teacher and said, what's going on? And they were outside, and the young boys were saying, we're not allowed in there. That's not for us. They'd seen the shiny kind of, the corporate office with a big sort of atrium inside, and they thought, no, I'm not allowed in there. And the crossing of the threshold, even doing that, was really transformational for those boys, where they started to realize that actually people like them did work in a place like that, and it really was a place for them. So to address this, I think, to address these barriers, we must really listen. And I always love hearing about organisations that use youth voice panels, local employer forums, and previous speakers spoke about partnerships and collaboration. And that's how you really capture what young people really need. So we think that what works is being flexible, using applied learning in school so young people can really understand what skills are required and practice them, mentoring, enterprise projects, and exposure to real world networks. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about two partnerships that we've got at the moment which kind of highlight that. One is with National Grid. So National Grid has what they call the Pathways to Progress programme, and they work with us, and they also work with other charities that work with different demographics as well. And they're looking at supporting young people in social mobility cold spots. And if I were to sum this programme up, I would use what they've called it, Pathways to Programme. So it takes a kind of tiered approach. So the first interaction might be people from National Grid going into the school to talk about their lives, their professional stories and journeys. Then there are the opportunities to take part in more structured sessions. And then that builds towards the opportunity to apply for an internship over the summer. And then that builds to the opportunity to learn about what apprenticeships are available and to be supported to apply for those. But it's very much an open door in both directions. So there's opportunities for colleagues to go in and talk to young people. And there's also opportunities for young people to use that previous example, cross that threshold and really see how this business might be for them. Another one is JP Morgan. You may have seen in the news last week a lot of press around their investment into Bournemouth. I actually live down the road from JP Morgan, and I went to one of their target schools, and I'm one of the young people. I was one of the young people that they're now trying to target to go, actually, you could come and work here. My fun story about JP Morgan is I actually cleaned the loos in JP Morgan when I was a teenager, but at no point did I think, as a pretty bright and pretty ambitious young person going to a very normal comprehensive down the road, that there might be a career path for me. So JP Morgan is trying to address exactly that. And they're following a similar route of really opening that door and that engagement with young people and giving multiple ways that schools and young people can engage with their business. And then the other bit that I think is really good and something for employers to think about is they are very clear what skills they want and need in their business, which helps us as a charity design programs that really deliver the right skills and help young people articulate when they do gain those skills so that they can take those into that business. So just to summarize, what can businesses do? I think that piece around being clear what skills they're looking for is really important. And with AI, and I know we're already talking about AI in the chat, I saw a couple of the questions. I think that's really thinking about what does AI actually mean for those young people? What do they need to be able to do with AI that might be applicable in the workplace? And we are looking as a charity, for example, about how we can really use the reach we already have to embed AI skills across everything we do. So I think that's a call out for people supporting young people as well, is how do you make sure as a charity that's always quite difficult to use a resource to be transformed and ready to really support with people with AI. Volunteer time and experience is hugely important, and little bite-sized pieces as well as larger opportunities are really important. I think co-creation is super key, working with schools and charities to find out what those barriers are. That example I said earlier about young people being not even feeling they could cross the threshold. You need to meet young people where they are, and if that is a genuine barrier, then think about how to address that barrier, not assume what the barriers might be. I think place-based collaborations, that Bournemouth example, are really good because you can be really clear and specific about what will work in that local ecosystem. And I think then embedding social value metrics across what you're doing, so tracking confidence, skills, and transitions into training is really key. So for employers, it's not just about how many hours volunteered, for example, by colleagues, but what impact those hours volunteered have and why. So I think our call to action is, we see every day that when young people get real experiences and role models, and they get to interact with businesses and people in businesses and hear their stories and find out they're real people with all different backgrounds, their confidence and their prospects and their aspirations change. They turn up, they're excited, they're engaged, they're hopeful and more confident. So that's our real call to action, is to be smarter about building those partnerships.
Awesome, thanks, Sarah, and that's really got people going. So the chat is lit up, so that's really helpful, and there's some really good examples. And I think, you know, the chat is picking up on that relevance and real examples as opposed to theoretical, which is really powerful. And that those stories you told there, Sarah, have really helped, and particularly the pathways, which perhaps we'll circle back to in questions. So just a reminder, we're now up to 168 people in this session, so it's grown a bit. If you haven't got any questions, please put them in Q&A. We can also track it in chat, but specific questions if you can put in Q&A. And I'll get in real trouble if I get Danielle's company wrong, because Danielle is in Wates, and Wates is a member of the 5% Club. So Danielle, over to you.
Thanks, everybody. I think it's a difficult task to go last, especially when you're on a panel with such incredible people like we've heard from this morning. So I hate being one of those people, but I do echo everything that Jessica, Lisa and Sarah have said, because ultimately there's a reason why they're on the panel today. But I think what I'll do is I'll start by saying who Wates are for those that don't know. Talk a little bit about myself, and then hopefully not repeat too much of what's been said, but kind of add on as best I can. So the Wates Group is a family-owned construction built environment specialist, and has been going for 120 something years. I think it's 27, but I don't want to be quoted wrong. So we are experts in all things built environment, from construction to infrastructure to maintenance in the property service sector, and I'm passionate about the work that we do, because we really do not just build homes but actually create communities. And there's something to be said about that, why social value is ingrained into the DNA of the business, and it really is because the family take it so seriously and have always done so in creating actual opportunities for everybody, not just the peoples that are benefiting from the homes or infrastructure that we're creating. I represent the Wates residential business unit today, who are working in partnership with local authorities, councils and housing associations to build affordable homes. And as part of that, my role is regional social value manager. And I cover the London area, which for those on the call that are based in London, every part of our country needs help and support right now. But we are facing very testing times in London in terms of opportunity and being able to scale opportunity whilst also creating these homes, especially for young people. So my role essentially is to ensure that not only do we make our industry an attractive industry, but we actually create and stop the skills gap getting any bigger, because we've touched on it before this morning, that the skills gap is ever growing, especially in the construction industry. And we've got a lot of fantastic people retiring out of our industry and not a lot of people coming in to take over the reins. So my team's opportunities for real meaningful social values to get out into the communities and actually meet and hopefully ignite some passion into coming into the built environment. I think coming to the subject matter of what we're on to today and why do I feel that there's a disengagement is because I don't think, for talking about my industry and in the private sector of trying to engage people, we're attractive enough. And I think that that often creates huge barriers for the world we live in now. You know, it's very accessible and it's very fast paced. It's very driven by social media. And I think the built environment as a whole entity, Wates are definitely trying to break this stigma. But we're old. We're you know, we're back in the dinosaur times in comparison to other industries, and we need to be more attractive. We need to be more dynamic because young people expect that from their future careers. I think that we're also, to Sarah's point, we're struggling with engagement because we're not accessible. There has been countless of opportunities where we've invited young people from various walks of life to come and visit us at Wates, and they actually are most of the time so mind blown that actually what they see on the surface of a construction site is actually a really nice office or, you know, flash place to go, and they don't feel that they can be seen there. The other issue with our industry, hugely talking about the construction sector and the built environment, is that people think that our industry is still only for the naughty children, or the children that are disengaged, or the children that are unfortunately, you know, facing barriers, which we are for them, but we are for everyone. We are for every young person. We, you know, doesn't matter what kind of path you've crossed. We, you know, we want to make opportunities work for everyone. But unfortunately, there's a stigma still with families and guardians and parents and teachers that say, you know, Johnny won't come into a role in construction because Johnny is academic. Well, there's lots of academic roles in construction. Why wouldn't Johnny do that? So we're constantly having to break down barriers with schools and community groups and CICs and try to change that mindset. I really strongly kind of go to the point of what Sarah was saying earlier about her career path. 10 years ago, before I started out in social value, I actually was in the performing world. I actually went to London Performing Arts College, and my ambition was to be a professional dancer. And now 10 years later, I'm working in the construction industry as a social value professional, and I didn't even know these jobs existed. So you don't know what you don't know. And I think one of the biggest things that we focus on at Wates is actually removing the unknown and actually showcasing the just amount of different programs that we have and what we do and how they can get involved. One of the ones I'd like to shine a spotlight on is the program that I commissioned called the Beacon program. And what the Beacon program set out to do was partner with schools and actually work with sixth form students in their first year of study in year 12 and co-create their timetable to link to their free time to come and spend time in the business world. So we worked with a cohort of 90 students from a school in Wandsworth, and what we did was we created a 13-week timetable that allows students to do their studies, have their ambitions of what they were wanting to do once they leave school, but also come into the real world of work and actually how do they manage their time, how do they dress professionally, how do they network with people, because it didn't matter if they were going to go off and be medical professionals after sixth form. We've given them a real sense of actual the world of work and just the variety of different jobs there are to offer in the world of work. And that program, we felt that was the missing ingredient, and it took away this, should I say, doing for doing sake work experience placement that often we're offering as different industries and different organisations sitting on the call today. I think people will agree that sometimes work experience is just to tick a box, and actually by the time the young person comes into the world of work and they learn all of the softer interpersonal skills, their placement is done. And actually, what have they taken away? Well, I don't know about anyone else, but if you threw me into a business that I knew nothing about and said, learn about it in 2 weeks, I'd probably really struggle, because that's a really hard task to do. So actually the Beacon program took it over 13 weeks, only took the time with the students for one of their free periods throughout the whole week, and said to them, you know, bite-sized learning would actually be more beneficial. And it was. And a lot of them by year 13 had actually changed their career mind like processes of what they wanted to do. And I think for us, we would never have given them that opportunity if we had said to them, learn everything you can in 2 weeks, because it's impossible. You know, it's a big task to do. So I think making programs that are realistic, that are under a time frame that actually people can digest information. I think also meeting people at their level, young people, you know, if they're accessing everything through social media, why are we putting everything on LinkedIn when they might not be told at school to make a LinkedIn profile? Why are we putting opportunities on Indeed.com, you know, if they don't go on Indeed.com? So we have to get to their level. We have to be more attractive. We have to be more dynamic. And I think us in the construction industry can do that. But I think other sectors and charities that we've heard of from today can do the same. I think one of the things that I'd like to end on is, you know, we're running the risk of talking about it without much action. So there needs to be more cross collaboration. There needs to be, off the back of this call, I'm already thinking, how can I work with Sarah, Jessica and Lisa and actually make something happen off the back of the call? Because I'm becoming really aware of the fact that I personally speak on panels quite a lot and on various different subject matters. But my goal after the end of the panel is to make something come out of that panel. What is the outcome? What do I want to achieve? And I think we all have a call to action for that. We all have a duty, if we actually care about social value, and this is mission critical focused year, that we need to do something off the back of every engagement that we have. Is it partnering? Is it, you know, co-creation of programs? Is it having another coffee to explore the conversation more? I don't know, but I think less talking, more action is really, really something I would like to put a call to action to everybody on the panel and in the room today, as we now look at 176 people, Mark, which is amazing, but we all have a duty of care. So in summary, we at Wates, you know, we are about creating a legacy of opportunities for everybody in the built environment, not just the builders and the, you know, the tradies as like. I think we are trying to inspire the next generation in all aspects. And to do that, we need everybody on the call to help us do that and get us in the rooms. One of the final things I'll end on is, as a private company, as the builder and developer, I know I'm not the expert of young people because they see me as an office bod. They're not relatable to me anymore, apparently, because I'm not that young, which is really sad. But in all seriousness, so what I do is I partner with organisations that are in the community that do relate to these young people of all walks of life. And I say, you're the experts in getting me in the room with them. And I have to rely on that. And a spotlight of a great case study of where that's worked is an organisation called Katie's Dream. Katie's Dream is an inactive CIC commissioned in Brent, who work with individuals that are bordering on crime intervention. And what they do is they partner with companies across Brent to actually engage young people before that, you know, it's too late. And we did a fantastic program with them all around how we can educate youth around putting down the knives and picking up, you know, the tools, or picking up the books, or whatever the subject matter of experience that they wanted. But I never would have got in the room, and my team would never got in the room with these young people if it wasn't for the charities. So we have to lean on the experts, and that's another call to action, is don't try to be the expert, because you shouldn't ever be the smartest person in the room. So in summary, please, let's all take the call to action to do something rather than just talk about it. And I hope that I haven't filled up too much time, Mark.
No, it's fine. Brilliant. Thanks, Danielle. And I'm a great advocate of that. I think we're a nation of problem admirers, and we all like a problem, then we study it to death, and we're not particularly good at moving to solutions. So I think your call to action is resonating by the number of hearts I can see dancing up the screen. So that's really helpful. And as you say, we've got 176 people in the room. The chat is alive, and we've also got lots of questions in the Q&A. I've got a few questions before we move to that. Sarah, can I come to you? Because I think what you described about pathways is really helpful. And of course, yesterday with the announcements, I think we might have confused the picture rather than provided clarity with youth guarantees and foundation apprenticeships and VETA levels and et cetera, et cetera. how do employers keep up with a currency on the pathway? How do young people keep up with that? And how can we make it simple rather than as complicated as it seems to be?
Yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? I mean, I wouldn't want to be a young person navigating all of that at the moment, and with the threat of AI looming. I think, I mean, a lot of people have given examples here of those place-based approaches where you kind of cut through all of that and you go into a local economy and say, what is needed in this area? What opportunities exist in this area? And what kind of skills might you need as a young person, or what kind of journeys might you follow to get those jobs? I mean, one of the things that I've seen on a lot of our programs that's really powerful is people from a business coming in and talking about their career routes, because of course we've all done all sorts of, you know, my toilet cleaning example is a good one. We've all done all sorts of things that have built us into the person that we are now, but as a young person you can't really imagine how all these moves might lead to this job or that job. So I think breaking down those kind of stories is really key. I think employers being able to say, look, we've got a skills shortage in X or Y, and being able to work with local schools to address those can be really, really powerful. And I gave the JP Morgan example there, and actually that's what National Grid is interested in doing as well. So I think that they are ways through, because they cut through which course you do or which path you might follow, and they're just bringing to life really what some of those opportunities might be and how you might get there, and also sending that message that actually all courses and all employment and every step that you take as a young person in the right direction towards building skills and experience is still valuable. So don't get overwhelmed by the choice, because people arrive at the end point by using many different journeys. I always think, you know, back to my early years and think, every single job I did, I'm still glad I did, even though some of those don't directly relate to what I do now. But as a young person, even if it's, you know, going and doing an internship for 2 weeks and you meet 30 people in that experience, or you kind of get a bit of a sense of how do you dress, and do you need to ask if you need to go to the loo, or all these tiny little, kind of think of them like the bottom of a fungus, you know, all those tiny little threads that actually build you into somebody that's really employable. And all of those interactions are really valuable. I mean, I know I've talked too long on this answer, but I'll just give you one example of a conversation I was in the summer. So it was with National Grid, and there was a young person who at first impressions didn't seem to have maybe got so much out of the internship. They struggled to turn up every day, maybe didn't appear that engaged when they were there. And then when we concluded this conversation, we realized, of course, that you have to meet young people where you are. So for that young person, although he wasn't ready to move on to an apprenticeship, he might have learned 100 things during that fortnight about being employable. And so I think the message on that one is employers have to be really willing to meet young people where they are as well, and accept that if you're dealing with a young person that's faced extreme disadvantage, and actually with this young lad, there were lots of factors in his backstory that made it quite difficult for him to turn up, is you need to be ready. If you're going to reach out and say, I want to work with neat young people, you as a business culturally have to really think through what that means and how you can support in a really meaningful way, and meet young people where they are, and accept that they might go from A to B, and you might have expected them to go from A to T, but A to B is still valuable.
Awesome, thanks, Sarah. And what I'm going to try and do now is, rather than stick to my scripted questions, I'm also going to do something clever and try and look at the questions we've been posed, just to get the audience involved. So Jess, if I could come to you, or Jessica, if I could come to you. Ollie Leggett's asked a question about what employers should do in terms of generic or specific. And clearly what you offer at SMBP is quite specific stuff. But I think the general nature of Ollie's question is, there's so much we could do. What should we do? What would give the most impact to the most young people? Have you got a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses look at the social mobility space and they think, right, we want to get involved. Where do we start? Because it just seems like an absolute mammoth operation. But I think the answer quite simply is just do something, right? So if all you can do is go in and volunteer in schools and helping primary school children to read and write, then you should do that. If actually you're going to invite students into your place of work and then look at introducing apprenticeships into your early recruitment opportunities, you can do that. And it's hugely varied. I think there's a lot of need from organisations, but I think the other big thing, and I think Sarah's touched on it, Danielle has touched on it already, is two things. Is students don't know what they don't know, and there's a big old world out there. There's lots for them to learn. So the more that you can get them interacting with the world of work, the better. And And also schools are so stretched, and understanding what you can do for them as a business is hugely important, because you might think, oh, we're going to design this really comprehensive program to support schools, but if it doesn't fit into what they're already doing, you'll really struggle to sort of get the buy-in from them, and it creates more work for who are already incredibly stretched people day to day. So there needs to be real transparency on the skills gaps in the area, the employment opportunities that are there, and then just a really open conversation between schools and businesses, which is difficult to find the time, but I suppose that's why you've got charities on the ground that sort of can develop their relationships and get a bit of insight into that, and help drive the direction. And I appreciate that's probably a really broad answer, but hopefully it's helpful, that it's just sort of get out there and do something. But really, you're looking, when we develop our programs, it is all about developing the students' skills, their awareness of employability skills that businesses are looking for, and just giving them that insight to the world of work that they wouldn't have had before, so they can walk into an office block next time and feel confident about it.
Awesome, thanks, Jessica. We've got a question here from Kathy Walker, CEO at Startup, about are we being ambitious enough, which I think is to your point, Danielle. If I can come back to Lisa. Lisa, you talked about complex barriers, and I think the thing that winds me up is that the times I go into a sort of a boardroom construct and people talk about NEAT as if a NEAT is a generic thing, that all is the same. And Lisa, you talked about a whole host of different barriers and intersectionalities. If we want to be ambitious, how do we tailor an approach to appeal to all those aspects and need, in particular, you know, the poverty, the fact that more people are living at home, the fact that people can't afford to travel to gain the experience they need, which does mean that some young people are at more advantage than others. Have you at the King's Trust got a perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, that point around like flexing to local needs, I think, similar. We're also focusing in some of those key areas where all of those factors come together. So they like in sort of metro city areas, we're working to understand the complexity within those areas and how we can solve for it. And I think like where we're concluding really is a lot about, I think someone mentioned before, around some of that flexibility in the offer that will cater to both young people and both employers as well. So we're really focused on designing that sort of modular approach and being able to tailor an approach that will work really effectively with an employer partner or delivery partner, but will also work really effectively for a young person as well. So being able to guide their path as appropriate and meet the needs that they have. And just kind of work in that way, really. We know that it's really effective, particularly with mental health. It's really effective to tackle both that challenge. So partnering with other organisations that are specialists in that. I know somebody mentioned, if you're not the expert in a certain area, so how do we work with experts in mental health, and then alongside that deliver what we deliver, which is that expertise around how you move into employment concurrently. So being able to develop those partnerships in local areas is really, really key.
Yeah, brilliant. No, that's really helpful. Thanks, Lisa. We've got another question here from Katie Snade, which I'll push to you, Danielle. And Katie's asked about the creation of programs that lead to employment, and could employers partner? And the reason I want to come to you, Danielle, is construction is a complex business, and we know there are lots of self-employed and people who aren't necessarily employed fully. So for an employer to offer an opportunity is not always the case. And of course, in construction, house building in particular, there's lots of mobility, people moving from site to site. Have you got any examples where Wates are working in partnership with others, or where you've got particular programs that lead to actual work at the end?
Well, yes, I do. And thank you for bringing the question to me. I think what local authorities are really doing well in the space of social value now, and under the umbrella of social value, is any organisations such as myself tendering for work for example, in the London Borough of, let's call it Buckley, the London Borough of Buckley would expect a developer like myself to come in and offer an X amount of jobs and an X amount of apprenticeships. And so that expectation to us sets like a clear parameter of, okay, how can we actually do that, and how do we do it? And an example of how we do it is we then have to lean on the experts in terms of the local authorities, the job centres. I see Maximus on the call. They're a fantastic organisation that are actually got a host of people within their portfolio that we can then speak with and create partnerships with, and we do that ongoing all the time. We create programs that are set up for the audience. So if I take Maximus for an example, Maximus have individuals from a whole host of ages that come into their programs and walk into their centres. And what we will do is we will identify how many jobs or opportunities that we've got, and then the caliber of people that they've got. So if they're saying to us, these people are not ready for work for 6 months and they need employability skills, we will work with them to get them work ready, but rather than saying, okay, well, you do that and then we come back, because that's not collaborative. And actually it's not on Maximus, for example, to get these people work ready, because they're not the employer, we are, or our supply chain are. So we need to identify with the partner that we partner with, again, using Maximus as an example, okay, what is the current state of these individuals? Are they work ready? Are they not? What do they need? How can we help them? And what do we have on offer? Because the reality is that we don't have everything, and we don't have an unlimited amount of jobs, but we will have a certain amount. Do they fit in with the portfolio of these people? Do these people want these types of jobs? If not, how can we still help them get work ready for another sector like the health and social sector, or the entertainment sector, or hospitality sector, etc. So we have our duty to just actually help people, no matter if they want to come into our industry or not. But we also need to be transparent in saying to the individuals referring them, are they work ready, or what's the gaps of employment and how do we fill them? So I would say our work with Maximus over the years, me personally, have always really enjoyed that kind of collaborative, open conversation to say, where are they in their pathway and how can we help them with the actual outcomes that we have? And if we can't, how can we still help them as an employer to get them work ready for another employer?
Fabulous. Thanks, Danielle. We've got another question here from Laura Giddings, which is just a slight shift in emphasis away from the sort of work readiness to careers guidance, and how we can help young people shape their sort of career choice. Sarah, if I could come to you, because there was a lot of stuff in your piece around relevance and how you make things relevant, and how, I think the phrase you use, you like the spark in a young person. And certainly, we often see young people get lost in education, and when they get in the world of work, that's when they really find out what they want to do. How do you think you can bridge that gap between the education world and the world of work, and how you can look to light those sparks across all young people, not those with the most opportunity?
Yeah, so this relates, I think, slightly to another question in the chat, which is around volunteering and how volunteers can support in this space. So I think there's been a lot of focus recently in the entrepreneurship world, actually, around entrepreneurship can be a vehicle for social mobility. But if young people don't get careers advice, that's a route available to them, and careers advisors don't have experience of entrepreneurship, that gets closed off. So that's quite specific to that. But I think there's no doubt that careers leads are under huge strain. And when we talk to young people, some of them recall having some careers guidance, others don't. It can be really patchy as schools come under increasing pressure in terms of budgets. But I think those micro volunteering opportunities, and other people have mentioned this on the call as well, are really key, because the power of someone coming in and just telling their story about what was their career like, where did they start, what was the first job they did, those type of and that might be an hour of someone's time, and that could be done virtually, which relates to another question actually that I've just spotted in the chat as well. That could be someone joining a group of students online and telling a story. So I think we need to be creative around any resources available. We have to recognize that resources are short within schools, but any resources available for volunteers to go in and support young people, either having a careers chat with them about their own career or just telling their story, or maybe mentoring or supporting a careers lead to learn about opportunities within their business or other local businesses. So that's one way to target it. I think it is a challenge, and pathways can get kind of shut off, I guess, if you get given careers advice that is too narrow. So we do really need to think about opening those doors. But I guess that's the key theme that's coming through here, is flexible, opening doors, doing something, not being afraid to step in and just try something. If you've got an hour of time, just go and ask some students what they'd like to hear, or let them do an Ask Me Anything session with you about your life, and build up from there. You know, the best programs, I think, are the ones that start with really small, simple interactions and then build up towards bigger and bigger opportunities as young people grow in confidence.
Brilliant, thanks, Sarah. Jessica, if I can come back to you, we've got a question from Guy. So he's the boss, so we need to at least put one of his questions forward. I think it's a great question about that doomsday scenario around AI, which wasn't helped by last night's Channel 4 dispatches program that talked about 8 or 9 million people being made or pushed out of work as AI comes in. Is it creating a sort of atmosphere of why bother, and how can we shift away from that doomsday scenario to the development of those enduring transferable soft skills that young people need? And so how can we move the debate away from the negative of AI to the positives?
So I think I'm very pleased to say that I haven't seen a why bother from young people. Actually, it's quite the opposite. They are very adept and confident with all technologies and very inspired by AI. We actually had a couple of businesses this year who ran work insight days complaining that students used AI to solve the business challenges that were posed to them, and actually created fantastic answers, and they were sort of a bit perplexed by it. But I sort of said, well, what do you expect? They're young people, they're utilising it. So I think there's a huge willingness from young people. I think the real concern is around a divide in the UK in schools being able to use AI. Some schools are saying we have an AI policy, no AI, and we're not going to use it at all. There's other schools who are sending their school leaders on AI training and their teachers on AI training so they can roll it out to their schools. And I think that we're definitely at risk of, it's either going to be a huge opportunity or a huge issue. And I think we really need to get to grips in terms of, employment opportunities across the UK. What does it mean for our workforce? But also for our young people coming through education. It's a huge opportunity to accelerate their education, but we need to have an understanding of the best way of using it, best practice, and making sure that everybody, all students across the UK are on a level playing field with that, because otherwise, as I said, we run the risk of creating a bigger divide, I think, across the UK with digital skills.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jessica. That's really, really helpful. We've got loads and loads of questions still coming through, and I'm also conscious that behind the scenes we're getting not the hurry up, but the you've got 2 or 3 minutes left, so it's a critical balancing act. I think what we'll do is we'll keep those questions, and actually, if we can, we'll put them to the panelists, because there's quite a lot of can we connect up and do things differently. I've got one final question, really, and it probably gives each panelist about 20 or 30 seconds, which is back to Danielle's point, moving from problem admiration to go away from this and doing something. So could I ask each of you what you would encourage those who are still with us, 177, what can they go away and do practically now that will make a difference? So Lisa, if I come to you first.
Yeah, a number of things. I think particularly when it comes to education, like engage with local education providers, understand enrichment opportunities to have young people be exposed to what the opportunities are in their local area. And another one, partner with the King's Trust and be a jobs provider with us and work with us on supporting you to get the people and the skills that you need in your organisations, as well as supporting all those young people that are looking for that.
Fabulous. Thanks, Lisa. Jessica?
Sorry, just grappling for the unmute button there. Yes, I think it's just as we've already touched on today, really, it's all about collaboration, isn't it? So when we start our programmes, we really try and go into a region and understand what's already there, who's willing to come on board and support in the delivery of a new work insight opportunity for students. And we couldn't do what we did without our hundreds of volunteers and 150 plus businesses that we work with. So yeah, if you're interested in getting involved, just reach out. And I think for Danielle, Lisa, and Sarah and I, us getting together and thinking about, you know, how can we complement each other's work as well, because we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. So united, I think we can have a much higher impact.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. Sarah, 10 seconds, one sentence.
10 seconds. I mean, I think I've already done my sum up, which is start somewhere. So go and talk to a school, go and talk to your colleagues about what you're willing to give, have a think about what you want to achieve as well as a business, if you're a business in this. But don't let perfection be the enemy of the good, or I think that's the phrase. So get out there and do something and build up from there.
Final thoughts, Danielle?
I think be humble enough to know that you're not the expert. And if you know that you're not the expert, go and find experts in community. Grassroots organisations are the people that are going to unlock this talent that we're not even tapping into, that we haven't even spoke about today. So go down to that grass level level and you know, and be humble enough to ask them what you need to do to get better, as said, you know, to actually open up doors instead of just talking about it.
Brilliant. Thank you all. It's been a great panel discussion. Thanks to all of you who have posed questions or contributed in chat. There was a lot that we could have answered, and obviously this is a very timely discussion when it comes to social value, but more importantly, solving a national problem. 1 million young people not effectively transitioning from education into work is a national challenge that we need to resolve, and we've got to stop admiring it. Always seems to have been a problem. Let's move to solutions. And I think we've had some brilliant advice. And I think the one thing from me, there's lots of different not-for-profits and charities out there. My advice is just have a chat with at least one of them. You're not alone. Talk to other people. Other people have got great ideas. If you work in collaboration, you can generally find a solution. So we're 1 minute over, but I've not been shouted at. So we'll stop there. Thanks all of you for joining. I hope you have a great rest of the day at the conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.